Good Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com podcast as Tennessee gets ready to take on Kentucky in a huge football game for both teams. We'll talk about the Wildcats. We'll talk some recruiting. We'll talk about UAB. We'll talk about some basketball as well. And this Tuesday edition of the podcast with Jesse Simonton, Rob Lewis, and Austin Price. I'm Brent Hubbs. Hope everybody is doing well. Let's put a bow tie on UAB. Takeaways from UAB. Not the instant reaction that you know, Jesse, you and Austin and I did right after the game, but just a couple of days later, what's the takeaway from UAB? Flush it, move on, not a whole lot to take from it, or do you think there's some stuff to glean from it, good and bad?
Well, I think the bad is, you know, you better hope that Jameer Johnson gets healthy this week and Darnell Wright, you know, gets healthy, and you can get some out of those guys on Saturday because, you know, Tennessee's offensive line. And I do think, you know, and Jeremy talked about it, and I do think UAB was pretty salty, especially, you know, in the interior of their defensive front. But, you know, I think Kentucky's got some guys that can, you know, get home too. So, you know, to me, that's the biggest takeaway I have. I mean, other than that, I mean, Tennessee took care of the you know, a solid opponent, and, you know, really, I mean, their first team defense hasn't given up a point in 6 quarters, so they continue to play well. But to me, the whole key this week is, you know, how healthy can Tennessee's offensive line get between now and Saturday night at 7:30.
It just wasn't pretty up front.
No, and there was some there, and this was kind of the opening of my review piece, was that I do think there is progress in just kind of methodically beating down an inferior opponent, and it was something that I kind of wondered about this team in our season predictions, you know, a couple months ago. That the beating the Alabamas and the Georgias and the Floridas of the world is going to have to start happening at some point. But first, you need to start just beating teams that you're better at in general. And they have started to do that. And so while it wasn't pretty up front, especially with really the 7 offensive linemen that played, because Locklear got to play a lot because they pulled in Carvin in and out. Obviously, Calvert played a bunch. Those PFF numbers are going to be pretty bad. Would that be on the box score piece on, you know, later today? But the defense, as Austin said, first team defense was really salty. They continue to kind of get pressure in some various ways, and I like some of the different blitz packages they had with the kind of a faux bear front. Schamberger got home once. You know, the 2 tip passes basically forced 2 interceptions. So you do see still some good that you know, some confidence that unit clearly is going to take into a Kentucky team that's pretty one-dimensional. So flush the bat, the kind of step back for the offensive line, see if you can get some guys healthy, and then, frankly, you know, what are they going to do at quarterback?
Well, I think that's where you go next. I mean, in terms of discussion about what this team's going to be down the stretch of this season, they did win a game, Rob, where they were better. Maybe they didn't play great, but they played clean enough and well enough to win a game, which they didn't do earlier in the year. They're better than BYU. The turnover in the second half changed the whole landscape of that game, the inability to finish in the first half. They didn't finish the first half Saturday night, but they avoided the critical mistakes. Obviously, Georgia State, they were better then, but just didn't play well. So progress, as Jesse's saying, from that standpoint, that they beat a UAB team they were better than on a night where they didn't play their best on the offensive side of the football.
Yeah, and one thing Jeremy keeps on coming back to is turnovers. I mean, Tennessee's getting them, and even though, I mean, Jared had a really bad one the other night, you're still +3 in the turnover category, and most nights that's going to result in good news, especially when you have your opponent outmatched. And I mean, I know UAB wasn't very good on offense, but I think what you're seeing is a Tennessee defense that's getting a lot more confident as the season goes on. I mean, I think part of that's experience. I think part of that, you know, obviously getting Bryce Thompson back, Daniel Batuli getting further removed from getting scoped at the end of August. But they're playing with so much more confidence and just, you know, a sense of urgency than they were 2 months ago. They look like the same unit.
I'll say this too. What was impressive, you know, as the counter to kind of how Tennessee's offensive line performed, Saturday was probably the first time all season the defense played really well, despite Batuli not really having a good game. Now, Jeremy Pruitt has alluded to the fact that how much they missed him the first couple weeks of the season and the defense struggling there. But Batuli was really a non-factor, I thought, on Saturday, and yet the defense didn't miss a beat. And you know, Toa might have had his best game in terms of a complete performance in his young Tennessee career. Obviously, Bryce Thompson was fantastic. Middleton and Solomon really good again. Karat Garland played a lot. Bumphus was back in the rotation. So to Rob's point about, other guys gaining confidence, I thought that really showed up, especially on tape, when you say, hey, it wasn't 35 out there making every play, it was a bunch of other guys.
Well, and I think the biggest, for me personally, the biggest example of them getting more confidence is they're faster. And it's not because they picked up some foot speed. It's not like their 40 times are better now than they were.
The
in
GPSs
August.
are reading the same.
They're reading the same, but they're getting there quicker because their first step's the right step. There's no hesitation in which way to go or whatever. I think that's a big part of why Nigel Warrior looks like a faster football player right now. Schamberger, although maybe didn't play his best against UAB the last few weeks, is in better position because he's got more confidence. So I think the confidence is showing up on that side of the ball, making that a faster looking defense, which is making them a more productive defense. So continued progress on the defensive side of the ball. Now they've got a unique challenge this week against Kentucky, which we'll dive into throughout the week. But let's go back to the offense and let's go to the quarterback deal. And I'm just having a little bit of a hard time figuring out some of the publicly acknowledged strategies on what you're doing. Brian Maurer was full go, but he didn't get enough first-team reps. Jared didn't practice early in the week, practiced the last couple of days, but didn't start him because the temperature dropped. And JT earned the start against South Carolina, but didn't earn enough leash to get past one bad throw on the opening possession.
And that leash was too short. I saw my joke, but that leash was too short for Smokey, apparently. He was, one throw, and there, Winky meets him on the sidelines and says, all right, that's it.
It is a little bit.
You and I have talked about it. Pruitt's comments about the weather in JG still just make absolutely no sense to me. Just stepping back, I get it if you want him to be the sixth man, but the argument that it was cold and he was having a tough time gripping the ball, and suddenly, literally 3 plays into the game, it must have warmed up, and you put him in the game for the rest of the first half. And
then you left him in there in the second half after your tackles were struggling and you were getting beat up, and he's landing on his Chubb, Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, is it as simple as the fact that Maurer really probably wasn't quite ready to play in terms of coming off 2 head injuries or whatever?
Or did he have a bad week?
Did he
assume he was going to be the man after getting cleared to play and maybe wasn't as good on the practice field as he needed to be?
Yeah,
I don't know.
No, I don't know either. But he certainly, talking to people, and AP had it out there first. He split the reps straight down with JT the first couple days of practice. So
people within the program said they expected Maurer to start on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday morning.
And I'll say this: as we hit Tuesday before Kentucky, I expect it to be 18-2 on Saturday.
You think Maurer?
I think it's Maurer and JG. I think Shrout. I wrote this. I think Shrout missed his opportunity. I think if Shrout was good against UAB, he could have seriously inserted himself into this quarterback equation where it truly maybe would be who does Tennessee go to down the stretch with 3 different guys. But my opinion coming out of that game, the way Tennessee handled JT, I don't think there's a ton of faith there. And I think he missed his window. That's my opinion.
I agree with that. I think it was pretty evident. I think they went into the game Saturday with the full intention of giving JT,
more than one
series, and then he threw one across his body, and I think that there's just such a fear that they will turn the ball over because he's done it in practice so much, but he's not done it in 2 games.
Right.
And that's probably my biggest, I won't say issue, but it's kind of my biggest. It's like, come on, you can't live in fear. If the kid goes in there and he turns it over, I understand, but how many passes did Jarrett throw Saturday that, potentially, we're going to get picked off? I watched Tom Brady, who's as good as anybody that's ever played the position, throw one, and Earl Thomas bit right on it and almost, picked it off at the 1 yard line.
Well, it was the other series. It was the first series in the second half when Shrout missed the safety, and he came out the very, which probably should have been intercepted. The guy dropped the ball, but it was
never saw the safety.
Never saw the safety at all, and they pulled him again. Like it was the very next series. So it's just,
which goes back to the notion of whether or not Maurer was really healthy. Maybe he was cleared to play, but they didn't feel. Because if you want to knock the rust off and get him back going before you go on the road and taking why not play him in the second half?
But if your O-line's taking a beating.
Yeah, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Why not play him some in the second half? I mean, it's not like the guy doesn't need reps.
I mean, when you're up,
you're not going to lose.
When you're up 4 scores.
Yeah, I mean,
see, I think once they got to that point, though, why go that route? Because,
especially with an offensive line not playing well.
Yeah, they're not playing well. He takes a shot. Number one's out there just playing kind of reckless. I mean, not Marquez, but, number one for UAB. I mean, why go down that route? Because then if he takes another shot in a game you're up 3 or 4 scores, everybody's going, what are you doing?
Well, what are you letting JG take shots with a broken hand?
Oh, that's what I'm talking about.
I mean, if you sit there on Monday at your press conference and you talk about one of the issues that you had was you need a quarterback there who can manage the run game. He can flip it right or left if you need to. And he alluded to Jared being more the guy, because of his experience, more capable of doing that. Why continue to get him knocked down in the second half? Now, maybe you don't go to Maurer there, but I mean,
which goes
why not go back to Shrout and say, hey, look, manage the game, get a little longer in the tooth, get some experience.
Which goes back. The whole flip in the run game makes sense because I was told before the South Carolina game that was the one thing that they were most concerned with about JT was during the week. As much as they worked it and repped it, he kept getting he didn't flip it. He didn't flip it correctly and would give the opposite signal that he was supposed to give, and so.
I would contend JG didn't flip it real well either. I mean, I just don't think that they and Pruitt alluded to that. I just don't think the quarterbacks in general manage the game the way they're going to need to moving forward against good competition. Yeah. And I think that's the
and some of that. And you know what? Some of that probably also falls on Brandon Kennedy, who meets with the media about every week and talks about how much responsibility is on his shoulders in terms of communication and identifying some of the run stuff. And he had a nice game a week ago against South Carolina against some Kinlaw and some other guys that were really good, but Fair ate his lunch on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, big time. I mean, that dude's pretty good. I mean, I would say Fair is going to do that to quite a few people, but he certainly did it to an SEC center.
He might have made himself some money on Saturday night.
For that guy looks woefully out of shape, and then all of a sudden you look up and he's just fast twitch.
He's sure there's no way if he got on a scale he'd only weigh about 335 or whatever his listed weight was.
I'm guessing we're closer to 360.
Yeah. He was. I mean, his quickness was surprising. I mean,
and power.
Yeah, and he had a lot of power there too. Their defensive front's pretty good. I don't want to say they're the best Tennessee's played or anything like that.
No, but Smith. I mean, he came into the game as their best, pure outside pass rusher, and Wanya had a rough night as well.
That may be the best edge guy they played since the Florida dudes.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
Wonham's pretty good. South Carolina.
Yeah, Wonham's pretty. I would say the Florida guys are maybe Ojolari's brother, because Aziz has been pretty good this year.
Yeah, maybe. He could compete with. I mean, he's in that category with those guys. I mean, he was an SEC looking.
He was
playing defensive end.
Kind of reminded me of a guy that Kentucky had, in Jordan Allen. Yeah. Was similar kind of in terms of twitch and kind of a little bit thinner, but he was able to really bend and get around.
Yeah, because for all the talk of their wide receivers and how they were SEC type dudes, and a couple of those guys. I mean, Five's a pretty good player. I mean, a couple of those guys are pretty good. I thought Price and Smith were the two most SEC looking dudes that UAB had running around on the football field Saturday night.
Yeah, I'd agree with that
for sure. Run game for Tennessee. I don't think it's all just about managing, flipping it right or left. This has emerged as Ty Chandler's. It feels like it's Ty Chandler's deal. Do they continue to ride with Chandler as being their featured back? And where did Tim Jordan go after the Alabama deal?
A couple weeks ago. Yeah, he goes for 92 yards or 90 plus yards at Alabama, and now he's not had 15 carries the last 2 weeks.
And most of his carries have gone for like 2 yards or less. I mean, they had, I think, almost 60% of Tennessee's runs on Saturday went for 1 yard, 0 yards, or negative yardage, and that's just not going to cut it. If Tennessee's going to win 2 out of 3 here, it's going to have to be better than that against Kentucky, Missouri, and even a terrible Vanderbilt team.
Well, and this is a Kentucky team, Austin, that gives up 170 yards rushing, but there's been a lot of years over lot of games in this matchup over the last 15, 20 years even where, you went into that game and Kentucky was giving up 200 yards rushing, and Tennessee hadn't been able to rush for a bunch of yards. Tennessee's going to have to be able to run the football Saturday night if they're going to have a chance to win this game, because Kentucky's not going to let you throw it over their head. I mean, I think patience is going to be interesting in this game, but Tennessee's got to run it better, bottom line.
Got to run it better. And again, I go back to what I started the podcast with. They got to get healthy up front. I mean, to me, it's as simple as that. I mean, if you can protect, if those guys are healthy, Tennessee can protect much better. They're going to be able to run block much better, which gives them a way better shot, no matter who the quarterback is, to have success.
But do you think? I mean, but is it? To me, it's not just. It isn't like a Jenga thing right now, like it has been with the offensive line in previous years. Guys just did not play well on Saturday.
No,
Darnell Wright's fine. I mean, but like one guy, we don't even know where Jameer would play. I mean, Trey Smith was probably Tennessee's best lineman on Saturday, and he was, I would just deem as average. I mean, Carvin's going to play and just did not play well. Smith is going to play, or Kennedy's going to play every snap and did not play well. Wanya's going to play most snaps, did not play well.
I go back to the play where Trey got the helmet-to-helmet collision. Marcus Tatum got bull rushed so bad, he almost sat in mine and your lap in the press box. So I mean, like, to me, they just got to have those guys. And if it's just getting Jameer back and he plays left and Wanya goes back to right, or if Darnell's back fully healthy, I just think, to me, I don't think it's Jenga that you pull one piece out and the whole thing comes tumbling down. But I do think that, not having both those guys, you pull two Jenga pieces out. And I know Jameer had missed 5 straight games, but still, though, you pull 2 tackle pieces out, and to me, it changes things dramatically.
Well, I think both those guys help. I think because there's some continuity been developing there and some confidence there. I agree with you too, Jesse. They all got to play better because they had a bad night at the office. That's just
how I would kind of.
Right,
that's
they had a bad night at the office. Rob, if you're Jeremy Pruitt, you're getting ready to play, and maybe this is over. Maybe I've talked about this too much. You're getting ready to play your 6th game in a row. How do you manage this team this week on the practice field? You got to get healthy. Where's that balance in line between beating them up and then making sure you got all your legs?
I'm backing completely off.
You shorten things. I mean, they backed it off some the last few weeks.
Bye week coming up. I mean, that wasn't an SEC game on Saturday, but it was plenty physical. In the trenches, as Tennessee's rushing total is going to test too. Other than just doing the bare minimum, I'm not worried about my team being physical enough at this point. I'm worried about them being healthy.
Can't you see some coaches though going, we backed off a little bit the last couple of weeks. Offensive line didn't play well. We need to hit somebody.
I'm sure some coaches.
There's a balance there. It's intriguing. I think it's going to be interesting to see.
But look at Trey Smith. He's playing better than anybody on either line of scrimmage, and he hadn't hit anybody during the week and all year.
True. He's obviously a freak and by far their best, most talented guy out there. But I think they do have to manage it very carefully this week. So that's something to keep an eye on as you move forward.
So thin. If you get somebody deemed to practice this week, I think the risk really outweigh the rewards at this point.
And this is where we find out, if they.
I don't disagree with you.
I don't either. And this is where we find out, how much growth Pruitt has in his 2nd season on the job, because he made this mistake a year ago where he was frustrated about
because they didn't play well.
They didn't play well, and then he beat the hell out of his team before, the Vandy game, and they just didn't have, the juice at the end. And
he's clearly a coach on Monday that wanted to make it very clear his team's not as improved as everybody wants to anoint them being. That they're not close to being as good as some people think, or have not improved as much as outside people think, given the fact they've won a couple ball games here and had a little bit of success. So we'll keep an eye on that on the practice field as we cover practice this afternoon and on Wednesday and continue to talk to people. Recruiting-wise, Tennessee gets the big one in over the weekend. They throw it to the tight end a whole bunch, make sure everybody knows they've got tight ends on their roster. It was the safest bet in the house on Saturday that Donwood Anderson was going to get some balls thrown his way.
3 catches the first time since the opener.
Even Austin Pope got one.
Even Austin Pope got a ball. Jacob Warren got a ball.
Andrew Craig
got a ball. Everybody. It's like Oprah. Everybody catches a ball at the tight end position. What do you make out of the Washington visit? You had a chance to visit with him. What do you take away from it?
Well, Jesse and I've had this conversation, yesterday. I think this thing comes down to Tennessee and Georgia. Wow. Does not have to go back to Georgia. He told me to to pick Georgia, but may end up back there unofficially. He's already taken his official there for the Notre Dame game. But getting him the last weekend to me is, a big deal. You know what? Honestly, I think it's Tennessee, Georgia, and Jesse may disagree with me here. I don't think Alabama's third. I think Oregon, that visit right before the Tennessee visit, to me, they're kind of sneaky. A West Coast school.
The only West Coast school.
The only West Coast school.
See, I think the kid wants to play in the SEC.
I do too, but I think that visit could be impressionable.
Are you surprised Alabama's not?
Well, we'll see.
He doesn't seem to have as much talk
doesn't seem not right now.
But that could change obviously this week.
Yeah, he goes there. He goes there this weekend.
Well, it's going to be a rocking show at that deal. No 1 versus 2. So.
And how did the domino? I think there's also with Alabama. There's kind of the underlying domino. If Gilbert ends up there, those two guys have been pretty open about the fact they don't think they're going to play at the same school, which is why LSU is not even a contender for Darnell Washington. So is that kind of a subtle? But I think this is a Tennessee-Georgia deal, and we'll see. Niedermeyer's done a great job putting the Vols, in position with the family. The mom likes Tennessee, was back here. Darnell's been here a bunch. Had fun playing video games with Pruitt. I think there's just kind of a natural comfortability here. But when push comes to shove, is Tennessee going to be able to, beat out a team that, is just at a different part, program-wise than they are right now?
Right, because it comes down to, can Tennessee win with a personal relationship over a program that's a playoff caliber team?
Yeah, and AP, what he said, he talked about he likes the Hartley guy at Georgia, and so it is. Now, I don't know the similar personalities between, how he connects with him versus how he connects with Niedermeyer, but Niedermeyer is the reason that Tennessee is in this deal.
Yeah, 100%. But he told me yesterday that he likes how just consistent the staff is. That they're about ball. There's not a lot of flash. But in reality, when you look at the teams recruiting him, Alabama, same type way. Georgia, same type way. So it's not shocking that, and he seems like a very meticulous kid, one that just sits and takes in everything that he's told, watches everything, then reacts. Does not seem like an emotional guy. I'm sure he maybe plays that way, but I'm just talking about when you talk to him with the way he's approaching the recruiting process. So I can see why he clicks a certain way with certain staffs. But Tennessee's kind of this is their Henry this year, or their Darnell Wright. This is the guy
that Crouch.
Yeah, this is the guy that they're going to have a best shot to land a 5-star with, and if he makes it back in here, which he's supposed to for that official visit that last weekend, Tennessee's I think going to have a real shot.
So he comes in December for his official visit. Jay Hardy comes off the board on Wednesday, tomorrow morning. He's supposed to come off the board. Still feels like Tennessee, even after the Auburn visit. I think we all tend to think that that's where that one still rides. Right now.
In my opinion, I think Tennessee.
He's laying low after the Auburn visit. Now, I will say that it's not like he's having conversations.
He's been laying low for a while, though.
Right.
He wanted to get this thing done. Like a lot of kids, they don't. Everybody knows how I feel about the crystal ball, okay? But a lot of kids just don't want their stuff. I think that the fact that Tyler Barron's dad works here and everybody just pegs him for Tennessee drives Tyler crazy. I think kids just don't like anybody knowing what they're doing, and it just it's almost impossible for it to not get out anymore. So I think the kids try to lay low the best they can, especially when they're up against a decision like this. And I've always felt like Tennessee. I just follow the visits. He's been to Auburn twice. He's been to Tennessee a million times, and family. I don't know who all went to Auburn, but people.
He had everybody up here.
It wasn't just the mom and dad for the visit. Kevin Cooper flew in, came up for the game, and there were other family members that came up, and they had the pictures and the jerseys and all that stuff. I just feel like that he's long wanted to play at Tennessee, and Tennessee's ability to flip this thing around the last month has helped ease any concerns that he or anybody else could have had.
Any other recruiting takeaways from Saturday? Anything of note?
Well, I'm gonna be interested to see what they do with Tisdall. He's a young man that academically is trying to get some stuff squared away. That's a South Carolina, Auburn, Tennessee deal. Tennessee just likes him as an athlete. They like him a lot. He could play running back. He could play linebacker. R.J. Perry's another one. Big defensive lineman. He's 6'6",
seems to be a guy kind of
climbing up the board.
Yeah.
Another guy that just athletically is really, really talented. So Tennessee continues to I think make a play for certain guys. Again, Tisdall's a guy that wasn't really nowhere to be found 6 weeks ago, and all of a sudden now he's Tennessee's a real factor with him. How many more of those guys pop up over the next several weeks? I think it depends a lot on what happens. Obviously, Jay Hardy, Tyler Barron, Oxendine, Big O. If those guys fall Tennessee's way, then the numbers and the faces won't be so different. If you were to miss on some guys, though, then all of a sudden it does change. Maybe Tennessee goes heavily after this guy or that guy down the stretch.
Well, I think with Tisdall, it's interesting who's going to sign him in December if the academic concerns are there. That may be a guy that gets pushed back into February because you're not ready to take it. You haven't seen those fall grades, that semester grades. You're not sure where all that's at. So that could be a storyline to watch with him a little bit moving forward as well, because that's one of the byproducts of the early signing period. Is the academic equation is a little bit different because you don't have as much information the second week of December as you have in the first week of February.
Well, yeah, and another guy who I don't think he doesn't fit this academically, but he's someone that Austin talked about a bunch during the spring, and then it seemed like Tennessee kind of faded with him a little bit. Maybe he faded with the Vols. But Beckwith was back here this weekend.
Yeah, he got to the game late, but was able to get a spot and spend a lot of time with the coaches after the game.
So where does Tennessee kind of stand with a kid like him? Does it because we're talking about the board reshuffling and some different guys being reevaluated. Seems like he's hot on Florida. I think Kentucky, who Tennessee obviously plays this weekend, is kind of involved there as well. So he's another one that I think. Do they get him back up here for an official visit? Where does he kind of sit in terms of – because he's kind of a Swiss Army knife in terms of what position he plays.
Well, and again, you have to massage the whole basketball angle with him. I mean, obviously –
Well, I don't know how Kentucky's doing that.
Well, I'm not sure how Florida's doing that.
Yeah,
I mean, like they're all because you can't sign a kid – it's not like you can sign him for basketball and then he play football. You don't do that anymore. So, you got to sign him for football and then – everybody's going to say, oh, yeah, you can come out and play once football season's done. I mean, why is Mike White not going to say that? Why is Rick not going to say that? I mean, everybody's going to say that. And then when push comes to shove, it's like Trayvon Flowers.
Right.
Oh, yeah, you're going to play baseball.
Is he going
so we need you for spring practice.
Is he going to turn down a football scholarship in December in hopes that some big Division I school is going to come in the spring signing period in basketball, which I don't think anybody who knows his game believes that's going to happen. I think he ends up going football. I think Florida and Kentucky have just gone at him full press, so to speak, football, in the efforts that, hey, sign somewhere in December because, look, our full scholarship, our grant and aid, our money that you're going to get from our school, okay, cost of attendance and all that stuff is going to be better than if you play basketball at UAB.
Right.
And I think that's the direction they've gone. Is they haven't massaged basketball. They've just said, the heck with basketball, we're going all in football. So we'll see. As for basketball itself, for Tennessee, season opener, Rob, against UNC Asheville with a different looking basketball team than what Rick Barnes and his staff had hoped they would have, with the news coming, being released by the university on Saturday involving Uros Plavich. Tough break for Tennessee. What's Rick Barnes going to do with this team? What are they going to look like now?
I think John Fulkerson's going to have to play 25 minutes a game at a higher level than he's ever approached in his career, and they're going to play a lot of small ball. I mean, Zach Kent's going to get an opportunity to get minutes. I'm just not sure I see that. And he may surprise me. I mean, he obviously has not played a lot. So, small sample size there, but I'll be surprised if he can be effective in the SEC. Now, maybe Zach proves me wrong. I'm not trying to hate on him. I'm just trying to give my predictions. But, man, I mean, I don't want to say Tennessee was counting on Plavsic, but I mean, going back to the summer when he first got here, I mean, everybody I spoke to just expressed a lot of optimism that he was going to qualify for a hardship with the circumstances, his mentor, the guy that I've talked about it before, was a former grad transfer here at Tennessee. Drazen Petrovic is the guy that knew him from Serbia, brought him over here, and got him into Hamilton Heights down in Chattanooga. Drazen gets a job at Arizona State and like a video coordinator, not an on-the-bench assistant, but Bobby Hurley hires him, which is the only reason they get Drazen or get Uroš. Right. Bobby Hurley fires Drazen after 1 year, and not surprisingly, Uroš wants to leave.
Right.
And that was, I think Tennessee felt like that, and there were some other mitigating circumstances behind the scenes that Tennessee felt like they had a good case. And some people that I talked to, this is as frustrated as I've ever seen them about anything. So a lot of surprise there. And I know Rick Barnes spoke at the quarterback club on Monday, and indicated that there was one more maybe avenue for an appeal. Technically, that's true. But people I've spoken to said that appeal, it's the final one. And Uroš has been denied once. His appeal got denied. So there's one more kind of last-ditch effort. But in talking with some people close to the situation, I'm told that last straw appeal is for when new information comes to light, which previously had not been presented as part of your argument. I don't think Tennessee has any new information. I think they've shot all the bullets in their gun. So while technically, I guess there may be a pinprick of hope, the person who explained the whole situation to me told me that they felt like it was a long shot.
I want to get back to we'll get back to basketball on this team for a second, but I want to ask this question to everybody. We've seen on the women's side of things Westbrook get denied. We've seen some others get denied. We see some win their appeal in all sports. There seems to be no rhyme or reason. Do you guys think that the NCAA needs to look at a blanket rule that says, hey, you can transfer one time, and then after the one-time transfer, then anything else has got to be an extenuating circumstance, an appeal, but basically we're going to give you a one-time transfer. Now, some people believe that that's what needs to happen because there's too much. Nobody understands kind of what goes on behind the door, behind the curtain, so to speak, when you go through these policies. Other people say, hey, that's going to become free agency in college sports. What are your thoughts on a one-time deal?
So basically it would be like coaches.
Right, but
yeah, it would be.
Right,
yeah.
but
there's no penalty.
But you're talking about
minus the buyouts. Yeah.
Right, you're talking about a couple of hundred coaches versus thousands of student athletes.
Still, I mean,
I do think that there absolutely has to be some sort of transparency, and because part of the issue that happens with these situations is then it just becomes a mudslinging contest where schools are mad at schools when, based on what we learned this summer through some of the football stuff, especially with Michigan, Aubrey Salmon, that kind of stuff. In the end, it really sounds like the schools have very little. They can petition one way or another, but the NCAA is really just going to do whatever the heck they want to do, and that's where the transparency needs to come in.
I mean, the most high-profile one. I mean, how in the world is? I mean, Justin Fields getting a hardship waiver to play at Ohio State.
Well, the easiest answer is if you have a lawyer, you're going to get one.
But then, I mean, every athletic department at this level could afford to help a kid get a lawyer, or not even afford to. I mean, there's going to be some very interested alumni that will take that case on pro bono. And
well, that probably should have happened for Euros, because if you go down the football list, the guys that had representation mostly were the ones that got the green light. I mean, it was Tate Martell, it was Fields, and it was it was.
Well, if they start letting them transfer like one time with no penalty, play right away. That's what you're.
That's the conversation I've had with a couple people and said, hey, there's a thought out there.
The tampering that goes on would be unbelievable.
Some would say that tampering's going on right now.
Sure, I get it, but to me, it's at least policed a little bit. More so than it would be if you had a blanket, you can transfer one time.
Well, you would have people call. I mean, there would be some people jumping around. I just think I don't know what the answer is, but the NCAA just their random thoughts. I mean, if I were a Euros or if I were somebody and I was going to have to set the whole year, I would absolutely publicly file a suit against the NCAA just for the publicity of it.
Sure.
Get a lawyer to do it on the cheap, and just for the publicity of it. Hey, I want to sue, because we all know the NCAA doesn't want to get sued. We know that. But it's really weird because there's this rush to give everybody immediate eligibility, it seemed like the first half of the year. Then there was this big slowdown, and now we're in a denial deal. We've seen several basketball players
the kid at
lose their appeal.
Alabama has one. that didn't get it. I mean, these kids aren't under contract. Scholarships are renewable every year. I mean, the coach can cut a kid, run him off if he wants to. I mean, I just don't see why the kids shouldn't have the same freedom of movement. These aren't professional athletes; they're college students. Yeah, I get it. It'd be a can of worms. There'd be some controversy, but you're still. I mean, tell a 19-year-old kid he can't go to school where he wants to go. I mean, that just seems draconian.
It's not going to be as big a can of worms as it is when you're talking about playing guys with their likeness, and that's a whole other podcast topic for another day. Back to basketball now. If Tennessee's in small ball, Rob, are they still man-to-man? Is this a pressing team? What's the identity of this team as a small ball team?
I think it depends on who's on the floor. I mean, and it depends if Yves Pons shows you he can handle guarding bigger guys. I think that's one of the keys. But I think having Pons on the floor defensively and having, along with Josiah James, either playing point or off the ball, that gives you 6'6" guys who can do a lot of different things. So I'll be surprised if Rick shifts it to the point where they're playing much zone other than just as a wrinkle like he's done in the past. And they'll press, but not balls out, Bruce Pearl pressure. I mean, just to slow it down, get them to start their offense with 28 seconds on the shot clock in the half court. And I think you'll see him doing some of that.
And the identity of this basketball team starts to create itself on Wednesday night with UNC Asheville in. Rotation won't be done, but you'll start to get an idea of what direction they're going to go with some things and who he's going to try to force into some more minutes to try to get something out of him. Kent, some others. We'll get an idea of that when Tennessee takes on UNC Asheville in the season opener. As we wrap up the podcast, we got our first major coaching move in football with the fact that Willie Taggart's out at Florida State.
Domino season.
Two questions. One, does that help Tennessee specifically in recruiting any one individual? And two, who's on your Florida State short list?
I don't think it helps. I can't name off the top of the hat somebody. I mean, Reggie Grimes is probably the only guy that Tennessee is even remotely interested in terms of connect. But it may help Tennessee this week if Stoops is having to answer a million questions. No, I'm not even worried. I'm not even talking about recruiting. I'm not talking about recruiting in Ripka. I'm just talking about distractions that Kentucky and Stoops and some of those guys may be dealing with. The fact that Mark is going to be bandied about as
and then he's going to have to
one
come
of the
out
most popular names connected to Florida
starting tomorrow on the SEC teleconference, I would imagine.
He probably got it on Monday at his press conference.
I mean, he's going to have to go. He's going to have to go less miles to, right before the SEC championship.
Strong football team.
To kind of squash any of that though, and then you put yourself in a position where you all of a sudden back yourself into a corner. I'm not going to Alabama, and then Nick Saban goes to Alabama. I mean, you know what I mean? The better off just to I'm coaching my football team right now.
The reality for him is nothing's going to happen in the Florida State search until after Thanksgiving. Or the weekend of Thanksgiving. You might have something you think in place, but you really can't get to – if you're going to hire a sitting coach, you can't get your dominoes really going until you get to that point. So there's going to be a ton of speculation out there. Stoops' name is going to be out there. A couple other guys. Who else do you think is going to be in the mix? If you're Florida State, the buyout number is kind of crazy out there. I've seen it everywhere from $24 to $18 million for Willie Taggart. But they ponied up and paid it in private money. So now those people got a big say in who they're going to hire.
If you're going to make that commitment, that you've got a big fish at least.
There's no. So? These ADs don't have plans anymore. They don't have a plan.
Can't
in place.
imagine. I understand he had to go, but I don't know.
So who are you going after?
I mean, I think Stoops is on the short list just because of the familiarity, and that's somebody you would have to pay $8 million a year to.
It depends on it does depend on how much money you have. I mean, it really does. I mean, the fact that three old guys can say we'll go ahead and write this check. That is just some rich boy money right there too. To just have three guys pay $20 million and say, get us another one, boys.
They say, "Hey, I'm going to go get us another one, boys. We're the search."
Okay, so they may be doing that, but if they are doing that, that means that the finances there, they're probably going to be able to invest in somebody that's. Could you go get a Matt Campbell who's been up for a bunch of jobs, or at least been rumored about? AP and I've talked about this all. Rob was on this. I mean, I think if Clay Helton, with what happened, USC is going to be will be the biggest opening at some point here this fall. So is Florida State trying to get out in front of that? Because if Urban Meyer is not going to return to coaching this year, then I think James Franklin becomes the most targeted guy for a big job, and I think he'd be USC's #1 choice. He is on that short list. You see some of the betting odds for Florida State as well, but the only way you're getting Franklin is if you can pay a boatload of money.
All right, last question, then we got to go. We got to be done here because we've dragged this. I've dragged this on forever in this podcast. But how good of a job is Florida State? Got a lot of tradition. Got some facility issues.
Yeah, I was going to say facilities.
Facilities, administration issues with who's actually in charge because they couldn't find an AD this past time that they had to hire a new AD. I'll say this though, in the week ACC, I think it's a great job.
I mean, just with the recruiting base and, it's not USC or Alabama tradition, but, I mean, they've got some tradition there. I mean, Heisman trophies, national championships. And, I mean, I think it's a really good job. You got one team to beat, and you're in the college playoff if you can get your stuff together.
It's the administration stuff. I mean, that's what they got to get sorted out.
Jimbo,
that's why Jimbo left.
I was going to say administration and facilities. I mean, Jimbo didn't feel a commitment.
And Jimbo also just left that roster tattered.
Right.
And then the reason Taggart got fired is because he didn't recruit a quarterback for 2 classes.
But that's also a place where you could restock the roster pretty quickly.
You can. I'm just saying, but that's
just by staying home.
Well, he didn't.
Well, that's what they thought Willie could do because he's a Florida guy.
But Willie didn't sign a quarterback, and then when you go out there and there's 15,000 fans or 20,000 fans, whatever in the stands, it ends it there. I still think it's a good job. I think it's a great recruiting base. They do have some facility issues. It's not Clemson right now, which I think some people are kind of. That's the Florida State folks are really bothered by that. But as Austin mentioned, it's in a conference where getting to a bowl game, it's a lot easier to get through the ACC than it is to get through the SEC.
Or even the Pac-12.
Or the Pac-12 for that matter.
Well, PJ Fleck take his 8-0 Minnesota and row that boat down to Tallahassee. Swamp water.
Mike Norvell would like to get in it for sure out of Memphis.
I don't see Norvell getting into that. He's got Arkansas written all over it.
Yep. I'm with Jesse on that. Unless Gus Malzahn goes back
too
to
much
Auburn.
money to buy Gus out.
That's what I'm saying. They had to fire me.
Wait a minute, you got inside scoop.
I'm telling you, I think Gus may just see the writing on the wall. They could go 8-4 if they lose to Georgia and Bama. It's going to be the same old song and dance.
Would include a $28 million buyout check after they fired me. If I was him.
The thing about Fleck, Jesse's right. You get in the boat up there at the top of the Mississippi, you just roll right down into the Gulf, hang a left down to Tallahassee.
I told Jesse this earlier. My dream scenario would be James Franklin and Auburn just tweaking Nick Saban at every turn, every press conference. Wouldn't that be fantastic?
The one name going out the door we haven't mentioned, it took literally about 18 hours for Lane Kiffin to go ahead and leak out his name, saying he was interested in the Florida
I think
State
you
job.
could get him when you just put a bunch of money.
That's if you're Florida State and you're looking for relevancy, now, can you control him? I get all that, but.
Can you imagine him?
The only way he gets that job, not the only way, the way he gets that job, as AP kind of talked about off air, is if they don't actually have the money.
Yeah, but they put all this money.
If they spend everything on the buyout,
you could structure his contract.
Then you could get him for cheap.
Yeah, you could structure his contract to where, he gets paid little to nothing up front, and then the more he wins, the more it balloons and blows up. But then if you're winning, then that's making money. So
I'm just looking forward to every job that gets open. Somewhat Lane leaks it to somebody one of his buddies out there that Lane Kiffin is interested in X job.
If it's a Power 5 job, he's going to be interested. Is Brent Venables looking to make a move?
That one's interesting.
Could he be ready to be a head coach, or is he comfortable where he's at?
His kids just got to Clemson now.
Lane Kiffin or Billy Napier. Napier's name's been thrown around at Florida State.
Brent Venables is like my buddy Brian Nix at Alcoa. He's content winning championships over there. Yeah, but they're not winning championships.
I know, but Bud's out the door. But for years it was Bud Foster. He was very content there. Who's interested in that job is going to be a storyline for sure in college football over the course of the next few weeks. That's going to do it for this edition of the Volquest.com podcast. For Jesse Simonton, Austin Price, and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day, everybody.